Today on Empowering Workplaces, we're to be talking about employee well-being with Enrique Rubio, top 100 HR influencer and founder and head of global community. Welcome to Empowering Workplaces, a show for anyone who wants to make work better and more fulfilling. We're your hosts, organizational psychologist Sanya Lucina
and aspiring leader Guille Santana. Join us in today's inspiring conversation.
Hello.
Hello, Enrique. Welcome. I am smiling ear to ear because I cannot believe how lucky Guy and I are to have you on the other side of the mic. You have done such an incredible job pulling together people who are passionate about HR across the world for so many years. I think of you and I actually say that and I get goosebumps because I can't even think about all the things that I've learned both from you and from the incredibly passionate speakers and community you've curated, as well as how many friends I've made from attending your events. So not only has it been just this incredible sharing and wealth of knowledge, but I actually globally have people who are very close to me now, who I've met after, different webinars, different events, different podcasts that you've put out. And so I feel like we're so privileged to have you. I feel so lucky to get to pick your brain a little bit because you've talked with hundreds of thousands of people. You're probably one of the individuals that maybe knows the best what's going on in HR today, like really what's going on, like just from the stories directly, both from people leading HR departments, culture departments, from those individuals who are combing through the data and trying to make sense of all of it. So thank you from the bottom of our hearts for joining us today. It is just so wonderful to have you here. And I was laughing maybe for a handful of listeners who are dialing in, who have not crossed paths with you. I would love for you to just take a few minutes and tell us about yourself.
Well, thank you, Sanya and Guille, for inviting me. I am humbled and honored, and I appreciate the introduction. Even though I consider myself a very extroverted person, when people talk about me in the beautiful way that you just did, it's always a very humbling experience. A very humbling moment for me, because there's been a lot of work to be in the place where I think I am right now, not where I want to be, and I continue to grow my my own personal brand and what I know, and but always keeping the community in mind, serving others, right? So that's a little bit of a way of an introduction. I am a community builder, and I am incredibly passionate about bringing people together to collaborate, learn, share, and more importantly, I have this belief that I'm sure you would agree with, which is the challenges and the problems that we're dealing with within the world are so complex that there's no way that anybody individually or at an organizational level or even at a country level would be able to resolve. We gotta get together, put our minds together, very open-minded and curious and thinking critically, but we gotta get together to solve these complex challenges that we're dealing with. And that to me is the purpose of building a community. It is providing a place for people to come, to share, to learn, to collaborate, to ask questions, to be there with others, but ultimately to be a source of light, a source of ideas, a source of a beacon of hope for the rest of the people in the world that look at that community and say, I love that they're doing what they're doing, and they are inspiring me to either be part of that community or create my own community and do my own thing. I am an electronic engineer by training, and my master's degree was with a focus on HR. So I bring technology and HR together in the work that I do. I am the founder and advisor for Hacking HR. I am the head of global community for Transform. And I haven't been in the quote unquote corporate world for about 5 years. I've been just building community. And that's been, the most, wonderful experience that anybody could have ever asked for. Not easy. The experience is not easy. Building community is one of the hardest things that anybody can ever do, but it's so rewarding. And lastly, I am located in a small, what I consider to be the best city that I've ever lived in my life, Flagstaff, in the northern part of the state of Arizona, just a short drive away from the Grand Canyon and the beautiful outdoor areas of the American Southwest. So yeah, that's me, and that's what I am.
Oh, I love it. Well, thank you for that wonderful introduction. And I agree. Building communities is certainly something that's not easy
Mm,
because getting people together, maybe once or twice, it takes energy, but then actually sustaining that energy and sustaining
yeah.
that commitment and building something that really continues to have that passion over time. That's where, the complexity is. Sometimes, a lot of times there's a novelty in a new group or a new community, but really keeping that over time is quite remarkable. And so, you mentioned that a lot of change that's happening or that we need is not easy. And I
Mm,
agree with you. And I remember when I first, went into what I call the real world after finishing my classes for my PhD and I started presenting at conferences. I thought it was like the coolest thing. And I was working in talent acquisition. And I'm like, this is amazing. And I was sharing research. And then a year passed, 2 years passed, 3 years passed. And I'm like, I'm using the same deck. It's like we have these ideas, and why is the world not changing? Like, we have
yeah.
this information. Why are we not putting it in place faster? And, then I realized really the complexities of the real world. And I realized that there are a lot of times that even with the best intentions, really creating change and creating sustainable change is not so easy. But looking over the last several years, like if you think about company cultures and if you think about some of the things that we've been striving for, globally as an HR community, is there something that comes to mind where you think like, yes, like we actually made an impact here? I wouldn't say we've arrived
Yeah.
because everything changes over time. And of course, goals and targets continue to evolve. But what's maybe an area where you feel like actually like significant progress has been made over the last several years?
Yeah. There's I can't remember the names of the people in this story that I'm going to tell you, but I don't know if you know the story of the post-it notes. The post-it notes, the guy who invented the post-it notes presented them in his company, 3M. And
Mhm.
he goes to this event and he presented the thing and everybody was like, oh, that's crap, right? And then the idea was put away for a number of years. And then another guy came in and said, what if we use that invention for another purpose? And when they repurposed the sort of the invention of the sort of the sticky thing with the post-it notes, the post-it notes stuck with people and they started using it. And what I'm saying here is that sometimes an idea, we may need to see it from a different angle in order to see the value. Or sometimes an idea is great, but the time for that idea is not the right time. And we just got to be okay with that, right? I mean, the idea, for example, of providing an outlet for people's passions and purpose and craft at work, that idea has been around for forever, pretty much. Like when I don't know who Seneca said, you if you like something, you will, if you find love in something, you will never have to work at it in your life, or something along those lines, right?
Mhm.
These are 2,000, 3,000 old year ideas, right? Um, but what happens is that sometimes it's not the right time for those ideas to flourish, and we just gotta be okay with that. Now, after so long, I think one thing that has emerged and it's starting to flourish right now is the idea that business success and people success are two sides of the very same coin. That you don't have to build as you cannot, not just that you don't have to, but you cannot build a successful business if you're not helping your people succeed, and vice versa. You can't make the opportunity for people to succeed a sustainable opportunity through work if that organization is not succeeding as well. And that to
Yeah.
me is something that has been said for a very long time. we have to provide the right kind of opportunities for people to thrive, to flourish, to succeed at work, and then they will give you their best. But that
Yeah.
idea has been put away for a long time, or we didn't believe in it, or maybe we didn't have the data to show to some people, especially business leaders, that this was an idea worth pursuing. But now that idea is coming back. It's not new, but it's coming back to front and center in our organizations, and many companies are realizing, wow, it is true. If I build great conditions for this person to learn, to develop, to grow, to succeed at work, they become more loyal. They help us build better brand reputation. They are more productive. They deliver with higher performance. They are more innovative. They deliver better value, and their teams become more profitable. That's tied to the idea of helping them as individuals succeed. And that, to me, is, of all the things that I can talk about, that one thing that is emerging right now, and I hope to see it flourish, is, to me, the most beautiful of all, that we know that work can succeed and people can succeed, and one is not opposite to the other. They go hand in hand.
Yeah, I love that. And one of the things that I'm thinking about as you're saying that is, what do you think finally got us there? Do you think it was just that with
Probably COVID.
time, like, of course,
Probably COVID. Yeah,
or
probably.
COVID,
No,
yeah.
I mean, no, but believe me, it's
Yeah.
not that somebody was like, "Oh, now is the time," and everybody was,
Yeah.
"Oh, yeah, now is the time. Let's follow." No, no. I think we were forced by the
Yeah.
circumstances, but that's okay, because sometimes some ideas are so good and the time is wrong for that idea, and then the circumstances change, and then if somebody said, "Hey, 50 years ago, somebody talked about this. Can we just like dust it off and talk about it again?" And maybe
Yeah.
because of the circumstances have changed, maybe that creates the right conditions for now that idea to emerge back from whatever drawer it was and to succeed. And I think in
Yeah.
our case, a lot of us, I think you are one of them, I am one of them, a lot of people have talked about this idea of people and business success are two sides of the same coin. We have talked about that for a long time. Maybe the moment was not the right moment, but I think the pandemic said, hey, you now got to dust off that
Yeah.
idea and bring it back to center, a center, front and center, because people are suffering. People are going through a lot. They want to continue working, but their family member is sick. They cannot even go to school anymore because the schools are shut down, whatever it is. People are dying around them. And I think that created the conditions for us to say, is there a better way to continue operating this organization, to continue making money, if that's what we're doing, but also caring for the people? And I think COVID, perhaps, maybe it was not exactly the only reason why this idea is emerging again, but it definitely was a
Yeah.
catalyst and accelerated the emergence of that idea back to front and center. I think there was a trend already from some organizations, Microsoft, IBM, Airbnb, that were already doing something like this, but it's becoming a lot more mainstream because the pandemic forced us into that. So of all the terrible things that the pandemic was to all of us, I think that one thing should be, I used to call it the silver lining, but somebody that I interviewed very early in the pandemic, she called it the gift of the
Mm.
terrible experience of the pandemic. The fact that now we are caring more for people, not as cogs in a machine, but as human beings,
Yeah.
as humans. Yeah.
What would you say if somebody's listening? And so I love that because I always think about, how can companies drive change? And is it something subtle? Is it a big, disruptive event? And I agree with you that in this case, it was something really big and it was something external. If somebody's listening to you and saying like, oh, Enrique, I love what you're saying. And I'm seeing that generally, but it's not really happening inside our organization. Or maybe we felt like it was happening, but all of a sudden, now that the pandemic's gone, I feel like, we're reporting a lot more on margins and
Mhm.
profits and losses and
Mhm.
invoicing. And like, yeah, we're still doing employee surveys. And yeah, we still have some kind of programs. But like I really feel like we're kind of starting to step away from that. If
Yeah.
any of our listeners, and I hope it's few, I really do, but if they're hearing that, what would your advice be to them for like what they can do to make sure that the really positive and good impact that we had from the pandemic, that it doesn't just over time kind of become forgotten or lost?
Yeah, I don't think it's few, by the way. I think it's a lot of companies that are going back to the way things were before, which is a really sad thing to witness, right? That we had this massive opportunity for improvement, for sustainable improvement, and it worked. By the way, it's not that we were doing something that never worked. We were doing something that actually worked. That, like for example, remote work or caring for people's mental health and their well-being and providing flexibility. It was not perfect, but it worked. And going back to the where things were before, which we already tried and we know they don't work, I think it's such a massive waste of all the pain that we went through during the pandemic and all that we have learned, by the way, over the past 4 years. Going back to whatever it was that we were doing in 2019 pretty much erases 4 or 5 years of progress and improvement and experience and learning. And that really sucks. I cannot put it in any other way. It really sucks. And for anybody listening to right now to this, right, and they are thinking, well, my organization seems to be pulling back a little bit on some of these changes. I'm going to say a couple of things. The first one is, sometimes, and this is probably the harshest of the things that I'm going to say is, sometimes there's nothing you can do, and that's going to be the trend. The organization may have done something just to stay like afloat, right? And try to survive the crisis. And now they are going back to quote unquote normal, quote unquote business as usual, which was not normal or usual at all. It was completely, broken the way we were doing things before. But if you see this trend happening and whatever you say, whatever other leaders do, they are not making a change in that downward kind of trend from your organization, you're going to have to leave because you're going to find yourself in a place where there's nothing you can do, and you will find yourself very frustrated and annoyed, and many other things, right? So that's the harshest kind of like way out. Now, if you say this company seems to be open to just at least considering, doing things in a better way, then you have a great opportunity to say, let me show some data here. Let me say, for example, you know what? The benchmark of our industry in absenteeism, for example, is, I don't know, this percentage, right? Or this amount. And the industry benchmark is that companies that have that level of absenteeism in our industry, they lose, I don't know, $1 billion a year or $100 million a year or $1 million a year. Now, over the past 2 years, we did this. We allowed people flexibility. We gave them the opportunity to say where you want to work from. You have to come to the office at least one day a week so that we can get together in teams. But not only that, we're bringing them back to the office to an experience that is completely different from the experience that we had before the pandemic in the office. So they don't come to the office to have Zoom calls, which they could have done from home. They come to the office to talk to each other, to collaborate, to support each other and whatnot. And now that we did this and we've been doing it for a couple of years, absenteeism in our company has decreased by, 75%. And that $1 billion that our peers in this industry are losing, we're not, because we're doing this. If that's not a strong enough case, and somebody said, well, that's not enough for me, then just get the hell out of there. Because honestly, if the language of business, which is money, doesn't talk to them, nothing will. But if it talks to them, then continue pushing a little bit more and a little bit more. Oh, now let's do this, and maybe we can do that. And here's the data, to create the case. Oh, we're having issues retaining talent. What if we provide more flexibility? Oh, we're having issues acquiring talent because we cannot find the kind of engineers that we're looking for. What if we look globally and not just in this city where we are? Oh, we're finding we have absenteeism problems. What if we care a little bit more for people's mental health, right? So you identify the problem, you create the opportunity, you show the data, and pretty much always you will have to speak that language of money because that's ultimately what moves the needle forward faster than anything else. And if you are able to connect those dots, you will find yourself in a great place. Again, what could happen if your company leaders say, wow, this is interesting. I didn't know that our peers were losing that much money. I didn't know we could have lost that much money and we're saving it because we're doing this. Awesome. And if they say, I don't care, I still want to bring people to the office, I want to force them back here, I think that's your cue to say, goodbye, see you later, I need to leave this place. I was going to use another
Yeah.
word, by the way, but I am a
Yeah.
I am a potty mouth, by the way. I say a lot of bad words when I am in my day-to-day life. I didn't used to be this way. I don't know what happened to me, but I think that I'm getting old, I guess, and I don't care that much. But I was going to use another word. I'm glad that I didn't.
Ah! No,
Mistakes.
I hear ya. I noticed that with my 5-year-old because anytime I use a bad word, I'm like, "Oh," and
Yeah,
then I just
yeah,
wait for a second. I'm like, "Did he hear it? Is he gonna repeat it?"
yeah,
No, I think you make really excellent points, and I think I do wanna reiterate one more time where you were saying that if somebody is really passionate about making a difference and the organization continues to be resistant, get out because there are plenty
get
of
out.
organizations that want to do it, and it's
Yeah,
hard. It's not easy. You need desire and you need strategy and you need perseverance and consistency and
yeah,
all of that to make a change. So if you're trying and the place where you are is just not receptive to it, go where people are
yeah.
saying, please, I want to do something different and I need somebody to help me. And then the second one that you were saying, and I've been talking about this a lot, particularly when it comes to HR, is using data, because we do
Mm,
have to understand that to speak in the language that somebody else understands and resonates with them is really important to get
yeah,
buy-in and to get things to move. And so I don't think by any means using data is like, oh, now we even have to use data. No, like everybody has certain things they want to accomplish in the organization. And so if it can be a win-win, I know that's a really big thing. And so I know looking at Enrique, we should have made this podcast, I think, 3 hours because we have so many questions where we'll never get to all of them.
I
But I
think we
know
had like 20 and we've gone through like two.
I know. And I know Gia has a few things she wants to ask you, particularly
Yeah.
about well-being, because that's been something that's been just so huge during the pandemic, after the pandemic, and something that I think all of us are like in our community are so passionate about and continuing to try to fight for. So Gia, go for it.
Well, Enrique, you mentioned that the pandemic was a big catalyst for all of this, just trying to make a change. Now that we're out of the pandemic, the importance that the organization plays in an employee's well-being is being questioned.
Mm.
Why do you think that is? Like, why do you think that's happening right now?
Well, work before the pandemic and work now is broken, and it broke us. It broke all of us. And what I mean by that is, let me give you one example. There was some research put out last year talking about the impact of a direct manager on people's mental health, and the research found that the impact of a direct manager on somebody's mental health is equal or more than the impact that that person's significant other or therapist has. So what that means is that a bad boss can truly break you or they can lift you up. So they have the opportunity to do one or the other. But in most cases, and we know this because people are worked out, people are stressed, the rates of depression and anxiety are through the roof. So if people spend a third of their days, half of their waking hours out in work, a manager has such an impact in their mental health and they're going through anxiety, I cannot help but think there's a connection here then between that person's mental health and well-being and how bad their managers may be treating that person. So if that's not a reason to be concerned about the impact of work on people's mental health, I don't know what is, right? And the problem is not just that, so I've heard some business leaders saying, well, people have to take care of their own mental health on their own, or that's not what the workplace is about. And all I kept thinking is like, yeah, but then you have somebody who's broken, and being broken means coming to work less motivated, less engaged, being less loyal to your brand, not just as an employee, by the way, but also as a customer. And it also means less productivity, lower performance, less trust, and you can think about all the possible bad things that can happen to a business, and they are happening to that person that has been broken because of the way your work works. So there's a direct connection here between work, people's mental health, and the return that that person gives back to that organization. And we can't miss that connection anymore. Work is breaking people, and if we can't re-engineer work for that organization to not break people anymore, well, they won't give you what you are expecting them to give you. Whenever you say, oh, we want people to give us 100%, 110%, they are giving you 10%, if they are broken at work, if at all, right? So you want to change the conditions. You don't just pay them more, which is, if you're not paying them well, that could be an avenue, right? To start, doing the right thing. But if you're already paying them well and productivity and performance are still, plateauing in your company, you got to look at other things. And those other things generally have to do with, do they feel safe at work? Can they be themselves? Do they have autonomy, flexibility? Do they have a good manager? Are they building good relationships at work? By the way, I want to bring another data point that I just thought about from a recent interview. I interviewed this person, and she mentioned some Gallup research, right? And they found that when people at work respond yes to the question of them having a best friend at work, they are 7 times more productive, 7 times more engaged than those that respond no to that question. So if you don't think that creating the conditions at work for people to build meaningful relationships with their peers and team members matters, you're going to have to rethink that hypothesis that you may have in your mind, because it does matter. If somebody can say, I can text somebody at work, I can ask for help, I can ask for support, I can be myself with that one person, that alone creates conditions for more engagement, more productivity, and more loyalty. And that's connected to, of course, mental health, but that is also connected to how that organization is designed to provide the opportunities for that person to build those relationships. So it's all connected. It's ultimately, my whole point here is it's all connected.
Yeah. And I think it's a big part of it too is, I mean, I remember I entered the workforce probably about 20 years ago. And even in that time frame, a lot of things changed. Like I remember first starting to work, and it was a badge of honor to work really late and get very little
Yeah.
sleep and feel like, and again, like 20 years is not that much time. And so even for me, I think sometimes I consciously check myself looking at my mentality and saying like, oh, I'm not feeling very well. Like, could I sit down for a little bit? Or like, oh, yeah, of course I can sit down. Of course I can take a little bit of time off. And I just think for people who have been in the workforce even longer, and people who have had to make significant trade-offs in their career. Like I remember when I was getting my PhD and we had to take these comprehensive exams in the end. And as a part of that, we had to like memorize like every article, title, author, what year it was published. And I looked at one of my professors and I said, but why? Like, why do we have to do that? And he's like, but it's always been done that way.
Yeah.
You
Oh my
know, and
gosh.
so I don't know, for some people who are still, in leadership positions or just been around, where it's like, oh, but hey, like I had to go through this and I'm successful and this worked for me. And you know what? Maybe it did, but it doesn't mean there's not a better way to do it. It doesn't mean that if we had to make a trade-off and not spend time with our friends and not spend time with our families and be really exhausted all the time, it doesn't mean that we still can be successful
Mm,
and love our jobs,
mm,
even getting a good amount of sleep and drinking our water and getting
mm,
exercise. And, one thing I've studied relationships at work a lot, like in organizational network analysis, and I've done so much of that. And I don't know why it wasn't until just this one point when you were talking about having a best friend at work that it dawned on me in a very non-scientific way that imagine having a full-time job and not having somebody you feel comfortable with and
mm.
not having, how awful is that?
Yeah.
You're
Yeah.
spending so many hours and you feel like there's not really a
There's
person that
nobody.
I trust, and there's
Mm.
like that can't be okay.
You're
Like it
drowning.
just
You're drowning. Yeah.
exactly. It's
Yeah.
too many hours, it's too much at stake, it's such a
Yeah.
big part of your life. And so for us, to think about like that's a very natural thing. And like if there's a way that we can help our employees create those relationships, right? And there's a lot of research around belonging and what can
Yeah.
organizations do. And so I think for some people it's more, easier. I'm an extrovert and I can go into work and do these different things. But for individuals who are not extroverts, it doesn't mean that an organization can do a little bit to help them
Yeah.
connect with others, because to, the first point you made in our conversation, it is a win-win. If you feel like you're taking care of your people, your business will automatically be taken care of.
Yeah. Yeah. It's interesting because again, if you talk to I call this has nothing to do with age or generations, by the way. It has to do with thinking. I call them old system thinkers. And what I mean by old system thinkers are the kind of people, young or old or in between, that think that because something worked in the past, that something has to be forced into the future, right? Or into the present or into the future. And some of those old system thinkers think that the workplace is not the place to build those connections, that the workplace is a place where there's a transaction happening, and the transaction is your time and your talent for money. And we have to show them the data. Sometimes they don't believe in the data, but sometimes you have to show them the data, and you have to say, yeah, but if you did just a tiny bit more to help promote meaningful relationships at work, people making a friend at work, it's likely that over time, that one person will be 7 times more engaged and more productive in your organization. Isn't that a great thing to make your organization more successful? That's not the way we did things in the past, which is totally fine. We didn't know, but now we know better. So going forward, we have to do things differently. Somebody said to me once, and I can't remember who that person was. It was in an interview. This person said, what got us here won't take us there. And that's exactly what we're talking about, right? There are some ideas that had their time. We're not even judging whether they worked or not, because we haven't made any moral judgment on those ideas. We are just saying right now that they got us here, but they won't take us there. Now, if you want to go there, you have to be open-minded. For example, to the idea that you have to build the conditions for somebody to have best friends at work, because in doing so, you're making your business better. Yes, it may sound like a hippie thing where you're like, oh, that's, we don't pay you for that. Forget about that. Forget about that assumption. Now, if you help create those conditions, it's an indirect investment in your business by creating that environment where people can have that best friend. Also, we got to say, some of these things cost almost zero. It is maybe properly training your managers, to be supportive, or to be great managers, or just just to have a manager that tells their people, you can trust me. You're safe with me. I got your back, because if I do, I know the team will do better. You will do better. The organization will do better. If you just can have your managers be able to do that, you will have achieved already something completely different to the way we were doing things in the past. But this is mindset. Don't be an old system thinker. That's what I'm saying. Don't be an old system thinker. Be a new system thinker.
Yeah, I love that. And I'm practicing this analogy, so it's still a little bit rusty, but I was recently talking to someone. I can't remember. We were talking about some programs or changes, and they were saying like, oh, but I don't know if that's really necessary now. Like when I was younger, we did this, things this way. And I was like, but listen, like some years ago, remember pagers? Like we would get a pager and somebody would beep us, and we would like, nobody questions like, oh my God, the technology, for communication has gone so far. And I have this smartphone that does everything. Like we don't challenge that. That's okay. But then we want to say we want an organization to do something differently. And all of a sudden, like, I don't know. Like, I'm like, why? It's just your point. It's a mindset that some things in life have progressed in a certain way that it seems like completely normal, that it changed completely and that it advanced so much, and other things that's like, I'm not really sure about this.
Yeah, it's like a little bit of double standards, right? It is accepting the fact that some things have evolved and we take fully advantage of that evolution. And some other things we want just to say, oh, this is the way it's always been done. I mean, if we had that mindset forever, I mean, we would be, riding horses and, I don't know, communicate, like taking 5 months to send a letter to the town next door. So yeah, it's just that we have to, the things are evolving, things are changing. Yeah. Fortunately, we have data now to prove that some ideas do work and do stick, and now we can know, well, as opposed to the guy who invented the Post-it notes, now we can say, well, you know what, through data, I have, I have the proof that this idea will not work right now, or I have the proof that this idea actually works. So why don't we do a little bit more about it?
No.
Now, Enrique, with all of that in mind, with all of this data, what would you advise to someone who would like to improve or build a well-being program inside their organizations, right? What can they bet on for a good initiative?
I would say get started, just get started, and don't go for don't try to change life and the world. Just, go small, just begin somewhere, just get it started. right? I mean, I see so many people that are, they are excited about changing things and they want to build a better world, but they are paralyzed. They are waiting for somebody to give them permission. Uh, I mean, and there are things that you need permission for from your boss or the company. Things that maybe bigger. But if now you're listening to this and now you know that when somebody has a best friend at work, they are 7 times more engaged and they deliver better performance, be a best friend for somebody. Go out there and be a best friend. If you cannot change the whole thing, just change the life of that one person. Be their best friend. Go and provide that support, build that rapport, build trust, make them feel safe, make them feel that you got their back so they can call you when they need. So you didn't change the entire organization, but you changed one person, right? And hopefully that person will change another one. So that's how you begin.
I love that, and I think that's so important for our listeners to really take to heart. And I think it's so true for any aspect of life, and particularly when you want to make a change inside the organization. Is that a lot of times it seems so big and so overwhelming, and where do you get started? And do you have the energy? Do you have the resources? But to your point, it doesn't always have to be that big. And I love the example that you're giving of that relationship, because that every single person can do. You don't have to be a manager. You don't have to have a team. You don't have to be an HR. You don't have to do any of that. You just need to show up and be good to someone. And
Yeah.
that is absolutely something everybody can do.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
Enrique, I will give you just one more opportunity if there's any. I feel like that was such wonderful advice, but I don't know if there's anything else that you want to share with our listeners as we start to wrap up our time together for today.
No, I think this was phenomenal. Thank you so much for inviting me. And I really think we have the opportunity to do something really great for the now and for the future. We just gotta make it happen, right? I mean, we can't just sit down and wait for somebody else to make change happen. And to me, that when I think about wanting to live in a better world and wanting things to be better, that puts a lot of accountability on me. Because I don't think anybody else will make it happen for me. I have to make it happen as well. So if we all thought, hey, we have to do a little bit to create this better world that we always talk about, let's just get it done. Let's just go out there and do it. That to me is the whole thing.
Oh, I love it. And for anybody that might not be in contact with you already and would love to reach out and have a conversation or become a part of your community, where's the best place to find you?
LinkedIn. They can find me on LinkedIn, Enrique Rubio, and I'm always hanging out in there.
I love
That.
it.
Thank you
Oh,
so much for
well,
inviting me.
thank you, Enrique. It was such a pleasure. And again, I can't believe how quickly the time went by. I
I
have a
know.
million more things I want to ask you, but thank you just from the bottom of our hearts. I think it's clear how passionate you are about making a positive change. And I love the combination of, thinking big and wanting to get great things done, but also like very practical, down to earth advice that I think any one of our listeners, once they're done with this episode, can feel like they can walk away and say, okay, I have actually a few things in mind that I feel like I can, start doing today. So thank you. Thank you for who you are. Thank you for what you do. And thank you for joining us today.
Thank you. I appreciate it. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you, Kia. Thank you.